Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another edition of Chemistry and Society. This is focused on Liberia, our Chemistry and Society series. In today's topic, we're going to be discussing the science of standardization and measurement, where in LIB. We want to welcome our listeners from around the globe. This program is presented by the one and only Dr. Saki Galafale. Saki, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you so much. Again, welcome to Chemistry and Society here on Focus on Liberia. It's on every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, USA, and 11 p.m. Liberian Time. Today, we'll be discussing a very interesting topic, something that matters to everyone, whether you live in Liberia or in the US, Europe, China, it matters to you. And you are everywhere you are, whatever you do, you use products, you eat, you watch television, you drive cars, you use just variety of products you use for to enhance your livelihood. And a lot of times you don't ask yourself what product you're using, what's the standard, what's the quality. And today we'll be discussing standardization. And we'll be talking about the science of standardization and how it impacts our development in Liberia. And today we have Mr. Hafiz Sherif. He is a graduate student at the University of Michigan. He's going to be our guest, and we're going to talk about standardization, the science of standardization and measurement in Liberia. How far Liberia is right now, where Liberia came from, and how far we are. What are the barriers to trade in terms of our commodities? How do we trade our commodities to other countries? And how Liberia approves commodities from other countries on the Liberian market. The food we eat, the water we drink, the medicine we take, the gasoline, the petroleum products, and everything, they have to meet up with some standards. So we'll be discussing these things, and we hope that you will stay tuned, and you have your questions to ask about the quality of the products on the Liberian market. We're going to explore different avenues about the science and how the science actually explains the essence of measurement and standardization. So without holding you too much, we'll go into our. For first, let me ask Mr. Ja. What's your impression? What do you expect today from our guest?
What I see here is, and before the show, I tried to memorize what I learned before: 60 seconds, maybe 1 minute, 60 minutes, and that's measurement. And then we're talking about standard. Which standard we're going to go by. So I'm all ears. I'm expecting us to get, because most of these things are textbook based. We really have not been able to understand exactly what they mean and relate to them in the real world. So I'm expecting Mr. Sharif to break this all down so that someone who did not memorize 60 seconds, maybe 1 minute, would know what measurement is and know what standard and how it relates to what we do on a daily basis. Man, I can't wait.
And also, people may wonder what a chemist or a physicist has to do with standardization and measurement. But we'll delve into that today and tell you the different connections. So without holding you hostage, ladies and gentlemen, we want to introduce to you our guest today, Mr. Hafiz Sherif. Mr. Sherif, welcome.
Thank you very much, Saki, for the opportunity. And congratulations on your appointment as assistant professor to Kenosha State University.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, I appreciate it. But Mr. Sherif, people may want to know, you being a physicist, am I right?
Yes.
Good. Based on your background, tell us about yourself and how do your background link to the issue of standardization and measurement?
Okay, so in the 3 bullet points, my name is Hafiz Karim Sharif Jr., and I'm a Liberian and a physics student. I would like to say that all of the time. Very specifically, my occupation has crossed several disciplines in terms of work. I have served as a chemist and a laboratory analyst at LPRC. I have worked as a physics laboratory trainer. I served alongside with you shoulder to shoulder, Mr. Galafale at the Ministry of Education. And I've been a lecturer at the University of Liberia for quite some amount of time now. I started that at a very tender age. But currently, I am at the University of Michigan pursuing a PhD degree in physics. My research focus is in atomic, molecular, and optical sciences.
Wait. Small ball like you say PhD in physics?
Yeah, trying to be able to follow Saki's footsteps. So that's what I'm doing right now. So right now I do not work. I'm a full-time PhD student, and I'm glad for the opportunity you have afforded me to at least brainstorm with you on the issue of metrology and standardization in Liberia.
Great. So you talk about two things, metrology and standardization. And we didn't mention the word metrology, but I think it will be a core part of this whole discussion that has to do with basically the science of measurement. So what is your background in standardization? Let's start from there.
So I will start from the very beginning of my background and everything. So I've always been interested in science and technology. So my core focus in high school was in science. Then I went to the University of Liberia and majored physics. Then I minored in chemistry. Sometimes I say I minor in math. Sometimes I say I minor in chemistry. This is about the number of courses I remember I took in any one of the disciplines. And then I graduated and I was hanging around Liberia, working at MOE with Saki and Maurice Wilson. Helping to build up the educational sector of Liberia, and at the same time lecturing at the Imperial Liberia part-time. And then Liberia had this challenge of ascending to the WTO, that's the World Trade Organization. And amongst the many requirements to ascend to WTO, you need to have a standard testing body because you're going to trade with international partners. So your goods and products you trade have to meet certain minimum international standards. Because such thing was very new to Liberia, the Ministry of Commerce thought it wise to recruit enthusiastic people who were willing to contribute towards the building.
So let me hold you there a little bit. When you talk about goods and services, goods have to meet certain standards, right? For example, I have this bottled water that probably imported a lot of Liberian, a lot of bottled water that imported in Liberia, right? Mm-hmm. So does this fall into a product that should meet some standard?
Exactly. In fact, if I just diverge a little bit from telling you my background, I will tell you metrology covers everything. Even the communication we have, the frequency we broadcast this program on, everything is covered by metrology. Metrology is like standardizing how we live. Even the air we breathe, at some point in time, we have to measure the amount of toxin. It's an entire thing. You being a chemist, you will be aware that even the air we breathe has some toxic materials in it. You have to be below certain standards for the air to be considered safe to breathe.
Yeah.
So yes, to answer your question, the water bottle is including the water within the bottle, but those are two different things.
Because we have this bottled water. The bottle is made out of polymers.
Exactly.
The cap and all these things are measured, and the quality of the water also is measured.
Yeah, that's correct. So I put it around 2011 to start a metrology system in Liberia. So we inherited a building constructed by UNIDO but nothing else. And we started from scratch. I can tell you in my life, that was one of the greatest opportunities I've ever had because most of the time you go to work with an established entity, but we're working from a blank slate. So you had a chance to innovate and to build your own entity according to your own rules. So we were basically in support of, you recall the Ellen Joseph Sirleaf government had something called the Poverty Reduction Strategy. And this PRS had 4 pillars. One of them were rule of law. Pillar number 2 was economic revitalization. That's the one we fell under because joining the WTO fell under economic revitalization at the time. So our National Standard Lab and our metrology scheme we're developing, yet in the embryonic stage, was swept under the Pillar 2 of PRS. So we went there, we started working from that blank slate. We partnered with UNIDO and ECOWAS and AU and London, people in London and Brazil. We just talked to international partners. And at the very beginning, we started teaching ourselves, talking about my background. We started teaching ourselves. I remember I trained myself in the quality management system in the ISO 17025, which is like the standard quality management system around the place. And then we started soliciting regional training. I remember one, we got some training from the Ghana Standard Board, an expert called Regina Water. When we felt we had learned enough at the local level, we engaged at the international level. And we had an agreement with the Brazilian government, the Brazilian Institute for International Cooperation, and I traveled to Brazil, and I spent 1 month studying exclusively what an entire metrology system would be like. So I studied everything from scratch. I studied in Rio de Janeiro, Rio Grande do Sul. I studied scientific metrology in Jirin, and I studied legal metrology in Rio Grande do Sul and Caxias do Sul.
Yeah. So let's satisfy the curiosity of our viewers. Okay. Talking about metrology. Yeah. What is metrology, and what's the whole background about metrology?
Well, metrology is a science of measurement. It's basically divided into two main parts: scientific metrology and legal metrology. Scientific metrology and legal metrology. So, and as a part of my training, as a part of my background, when I did all of those scientific and legal metrology studies in Brazil, I also went to UK and studied the full UCAS system, which is also that's the UK accreditation system in metrology, which is also a legal metrology, to say the least. So, under legal metrology, we talk about basically products, goods, economic or commodities meeting certain minimum standards, as well as almost everything meeting legal standards, EPA regulations, gasoline safety, all of those things form legal metrology. And the scientific metrology is what you and I will talk about in the lab. You want to measure a mass, the mass has to be traceable to SI standards and all of those things. Those are legal metrology. That's the two broad branches.
Good. So somebody listening to you with your background in physics and you're doing your research in optics, am I right?
Yeah. So
how does physics? Now I'm a chemist, and somebody will want to know, how does chemistry and physics connect to this whole legal issue of standardization and stuff like that?
We measure every day. I bet you will not have processed some of those polymers without measuring the real volume of ethanol. So, metrology is about measurement, right? I mean, I'm measuring the spectrum of stuffs in the lab. I'm measuring the weight of stuff. So, first of all, to begin with, metrology is inherent to physics, chemistry, biology, all of the physical sciences, as well as the life sciences. That's the first thing. Metrology is also related to law. Because when you tell someone, oh, you sold me a bottle of water that you claim to be 30 or 300 ml. It is not actually 300 ml. So I'm going to sue you for it. Well, someone has to come in and say within what degree of uncertainty the seller is allowed to quote the volume of water he sells to you. So that is how we come in. But then, you see, to be very honest, if you are a historian, you can still serve as a metrologist. It's something you can learn as a science. But with your background in science, we have an advantage because while you're a scientist, you study uncertainty, you study measuring instruments, you study standards of measurement, you study the ORML, you study NIST in America, ASTM. So, to say the least, science is inherent, metrology is inherent to science.
Yeah, I used some ASTM standards before, standard methods before. Mr. Jai, you want to come in?
Yeah, I want to come in because I want to put a break on it all, because I was born and raised in the village, right? Yeah. So let's first start with standard, and then we go to measurement. Okay. In the village, the standard means we all have to agree that we will use this cup to measure our rice.
Yes, that's correct.
In Nigeria, we agree that we're going to use the Congo to measure our rice. So that's the standard for measuring rice is the cup.
Yeah.
Then we say, okay, since we all agree that the cup we're going to use, so it means that 3 cups here, if I go to the other town, it's still the same 3 cups because all of that's our standard, and so we are using this cup to measure rice. Yeah. Is that a connection between measurement and standards?
Correct. I think Mr. Jahas but in the essence of metrology and standardization. So what you just discussed will technically be classified under technical barriers to trade. So I will just put the icing on the cake saying you've already done a hard job. I'm a Liberian, and I plant rice, or I grow rice for commercial purposes. I want to sell it. But I want to sell this rice to some country, hopefully Sierra Leone, right? So that I can make money, perhaps, or maybe do other things. And then I know that I claim that I'm selling 25 kilograms for a certain price. So let's put that number here for a second, 25 kilograms. Now, how do I know it is 25 kilograms? I have to go and measure it somewhere, right? Then I answer Saki's question, why, how science and physics and everything comes from. You need to get someone who knows how to use a measuring tool to measure that rice, 25 kilograms. Then the person will tell me your rice is 25 kilograms with a certain degree of uncertainty, right? And then, because the only real 25 kilogram we know universally will be here at the International Bureau of Standards, somewhere in service near Paris. So we need something to compare to that standard. That would be our measuring tool. Then I'm going to sell this 25 kilograms to Sierra Leone. When the buyer in Sierra Leone buys this 25 kilograms of rice, he must be able to measure it on his own tool and be satisfied that indeed he has bought 25 kilograms of rice for me. So this brings about standardization, as Mr. Jai has clearly explained. Technical barriers to trade indicates these technicalities that are involved within this measuring, the tool system for measurement and this communication process.
Happy,
yes?
Before we go to the whole barriers to trade and things, let's come back a little bit. When you talk about the 25 kilogram rice that is sold on the Liberian market, let's talk about standardization, the story of standardization in Liberia, and how does metrology fit in? Okay, so sadly, Liberia has have no practical standard prior to 2011 or maybe 2010. Everything we consume in Liberia, so on the books there might be standard. I have not done an extensive retrospective study of all our laws on the book. I want to be careful about this. But in practice, we have had no standard. We have always accepted manufacturer or seller's declaration. So Saki is selling something to Liberia, and Saki said this thing is 20 tons, we take it for 20 tons. There may be some amount of verification, but not much. So I have this hand sanitizer. It says ethanol, ethyl alcohol, 72%.
Yeah.
And in Liberia, it was just something we accepted.
Yeah, we accept it. That's manufacturer declaration. We have not had any system by which we will verify that indeed is 72%. And you see how that is important, because you need at least 70% alcohol within that hand sanitizer to be effective against COVID-19, right? And then someone told you it's 72%. Why? It's actually maybe 50%, right? But then you take the manufacturer's declaration. So we've been feeding in the darkness, if we want to put it, politely. As of 2010, 2011, when we started this standardization, each business, we decided to at least ensure that every good or product coming to Liberia be tested against a certain standard. So the president, to solve the problem, immediately brought in BVAC, which we may talk about in the course of a program. Yeah. She brought in BVAC, but from my point of view, this is my personal opinion, BVAC has not been effective in solving the standardization problem. Most of the time, they have been weak verification. They have still been relying solely upon manufacturer's declaration. That's a period standardization story. Now, fast forward.
Well, Harvest.
Yes.
Harvest. Yeah. The example you gave with the ethanol, the content in the hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. But what's about? And you say there are no standards. What's about somebody in China sending all rice, and they say this bag of rice is 50 kg or is 100 kg? We can verify that, right? Or we don't have any way of knowing. We just accept that, what you call manufacturer declaration? Or
So your answer comes in threefold. Can we verify that? Yes. We can go buy a balance and train a student, a sophomore student from UL, or maybe a good 11th grade student to measure the rice. We can do that, right? It's not hard to verify. But I can tell you that is hardly done in fact. I don't want to sound too critical, but I want to be factual. So that is not even done satisfactorily, but we can do that. Now, as it relates to our trust of manufacturer declaration, we normally rely on the fact that this product sold by China is also sold on the world market. So Ghana bought it. Ghana has a Ghana standard bowl. They verify this according to that standard. Oh, Ivory Coast bought it too. They verify it. Oh, but then we can be sure. Let's just buy it. We live like that in Liberia part of that, which is not safe. So, and I'll tell you my experiences with that later. But as it relates to verification, it is not too hard. So, like I said, with no disrespect to the field of history, a historian can become a metrologist. It's something you can learn. You measure something, you tell me whether it's up to the measurement or not. It is the standardization that matters. That's why I love your explanation, Mr. Jha. It is the standardization that matters. We must have that standard that says, yes, 1 cup of rice in your village is 1 cup of rice in my village. That is what really matters. The measurement project is extremely crucial with standardization. But you can have the best measuring scientists and the best measuring tool. Without standardization, you achieve nothing.
So in a sense, last week we had a very interesting discussion on our pharmaceutical products on the Liberian market. Okay. And when you talk about product standardization, how does that relate to? Because one of the objectives of the international standard organization is that products have to meet with some standards to protect human health, life and safety, and all those things. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about pharmaceutical products, be it instruments or the medicines, the drugs themselves, where does Liberia stand in terms of standardizing medical products that come on the market?
Okay. First of all, someone from the Liberia Board on medicine and drug would be the best person to answer this question on medication. But I can tell you where Liberia stands generally on standardization. We started a national standard lab between 2010 and 2011. 2012, Nicholas Williams, Carmon Gibson, Jonathan Davis, and myself had already completed a functioning metrology laboratory by 2012. We started calibration. I recall at the time, one of the panelists, Mr. Galafale, were with SGS. I did some calibration work with the infrared gain and the thermometers at SGS. So we had a functioning laboratory. But at the same time, in 2012, Liberia had a harmonization meeting with key stakeholders, UL, private sector, the Liberia Marketing Board, to have a national standard to begin with. You need a national standard to propose for an international standard, right? So we had that harmonization meeting, and everything went well. However, the national standard lab fell short of achieving the support, mainly funding. Secondly, autonomy. Those two support are required. To have a standard body, you need a high degree of autonomy. Because if Saki Galafale is a high stake in the government, sorry to say government, but in a society, everything doesn't have to be about government, but in a society, if Saki Galafale impose a product or goods that is below standard, he must be asked to at least take that out of the market. So we need high degree of autonomy to achieve that. And we need funding. It's extremely expensive. So right now, as I speak to you, we have not achieved national standardization in almost anything. I hold my breath a bit when it comes to medicine, because in my experience when I work with the standardization body in Liberia, the guys with medicine were trying to veer off their own tangent because medicine is extremely crucial. But I can be sure that I don't even think we have national standards for medicine.
So, but talking about we don't have national standards, and in July 2016, it's been 4 years, Liberia became member of the WTO, and as part of some of the requirements, standardization, meeting some basic requirements, it was the timeline for Liberia, membership from 2007 to 2016. It took so long. I know some of those barriers to trade and all those things factor in. But how do you say we don't have, what did you say, we don't have standard, but then we don't have national standard, but we are part of the world WTO?
That's a good question. It's going to take me a minute or two to answer that. So I want to go through it carefully, so that no one misconstrues anything. From the very beginning, I said we don't have practical standards, because for me to go there say we don't have standards at all, that would require a complete, comprehensive, retrospective study of all of our laws and everything else. Some of these things are existing, but we don't even know about them. But in practice, there are no standard in practice. It's not prolific at all. It's not. We don't have practical national standard, approved practical national standard. That's number one. Number two, how did we become a member of the WTO? And I'm here saying this is simple. Becoming a member of the WTO has several requirements, amongst them having a national standard body. You understand? There is no national standard body in Liberia right now. So you may say, oh, we fell short of the requirement. But the requirements were many. I don't know of all the economic and financial requirement or public financial requirement, but I will speak to the standardization requirement. We needed to have a national standard testing body at least. So then when the national, that's one of the reasons I was recruited, like I said, right? Because we wanted to meet this requirement. So we started a national standard lab. As of 2012, we already had a standard lab standing and waiting, achieved by very hard-working Liberians. And I've just mentioned 4 metrologists who have achieved the metrologist lab. By 2012, to be very humble about this, I have already calibrated up to ORML standard, a thermometer within the Republic of Liberia that had never been done before. So we moved quite fast. We had a standing testing facility. We did microbiology testing. We tested flowers. We tested local alcohol produced, within the Liberian market. We tested for aflatoxin, a lot of things. We have verification for volumes, our field dispensers. We have verification system for masses, for people who do the mining and all kinds of things. We have verification system for even thermometers. But now, for this to be national standard, they have to be enacted. You understand, right?
Yeah.
Someone has to be sued. So Saki, for instance, if you claim something is 5 grams, it is not 5 grams. I can only tell you, oh, it is not 5 grams in Liberia. But I bet you if I took you to court, you will challenge me, show me the law. There is no law that says, according to the law, this matchbox must be 5 grams. So indeed, we are working on standard. Indeed, we have things in the book, but they are not national standard because they are not being.
Just to add to that,
yeah.
A guy selling me gasoline in a mayonnaise jar.
Yeah.
And I claimed that he didn't give me 5 gallons.
Yes.
And he said he gave me a 5 gallon. He put 5 gallon in my tank. Why is it that people sell, instead of using a actual calibrated system for gasoline measurement, they use the mayonnaise jar? Is that something of standard in Liberia?
So the same problem with standard, because if you have strong standard system in Liberia, people won't sell gasoline in mayonnaise jar. It's dangerous. Yeah, you could burn down an entire community by selling gasoline in mayonnaise jar. That's number one. Number two, no one calibrated your this topic. 1 hour cannot do justice to it, to be frank. Yeah, 1 hour cannot do it, because it has several tributaries that you have to dive into. For Saki to sell gasoline to me in mayonnaise jar and turn it to be 1 gallon, Saki must take his mayonnaise jar to the national standard lab. We're going to use a visual gauge to measure the volume of gasoline in the mayonnaise jar. And tell Saki, we won't tell him a fail or a pass. We can't do that, but we can tell him what volume that mayonnaise jar measure. And we give him a sticker, a verification stamp or a calibration stamp, depending on what you go for. But you can either go for verification or you go for calibration. Calibration is more thorough and more scientific.
So our listeners hearing calibration, how can you simplify that for them?
Calibration is a comparison of a measuring standard to an accepted, established standard. So to go back to Jazz analogy, a cup of rice, the 1 cup in the interior or in his village where he lives, that cup should be measured to the Liberia Marketing Association established 1 cup. So that is calibration. Verification is to just check to see if it is true or not true. So it's a yes or no. Calibration is, we will tell Jar, instead of 1 cup, this is 0.785 cup, plus or minus 0.00 with this degree of certainty. It's more scientific. But in a nutshell or in a broad sense, they will both achieve the same thing. Then we will measure Saki's mayonnaise jar and say, Saki, you are actually selling 3.2 liters and not 1 gallon. Then Saki will know what he's selling. If you went for verification, we'll tell you directly, no, this is not 1 gallon. If you went for calibration, we'll tell him exactly what his mayonnaise jar measures to. Then when Jar goes to buy gasoline, he will say, Saki, you're selling 1 gallon of gasoline to me. Can I see a verification sticker from Ministry of Commerce and Industry? Oh, This thing has not been verified. So I can't be sure that you are selling me more or you are selling to me less. So you understand? This is where, and just go back quickly to the WTO thing before I forget, or before our viewers get the wrong understanding. So WTO did not say you must hit 100% all of our requirements before you become a member. They provided a list of requirements. Crucial among the list was establishment of a national standard laboratory, which we have achieved as a nation. So that's like a big achievement within the list of requirements. But do we have established, legally enacted standards in Liberia? I would say not. I'm very careful with the medical people because I am not from the medical field. But broadly speaking, I would say no, we don't have those.
Great. We're having a very interesting conversation here on the science of standardization and measurement in Liberia. We have with us Mr. Hafiz Sherif from the University of Michigan, and very experienced in leading several efforts to get Liberia into having her own standard lab, and then towards WTO membership. But Mr. Jai, you wanted to come in.
Yes, I want to, for anyone joining us this time and hear us talking about standardization or measurement, verification, calibration, I want Saki or Mr. Sherif to explain to them why should they care, why should this matter? Not having standardization, what is the impact it's having on the country, on the people, on the economy, and everything else. So anyone watching us now is, why is this important, Mr. Sherif?
This is an excellent question, really excellent question. In the first place, not having standardization kind of holds back our economic growth. We can't trade. Let me just give you a very, how should I say, quick reason. There are only 3 countries in the world now that use the English Imperial System. The United States of America,
yes,
Burma, which is now Myanmar, and Liberia. All the other guys use the SI system. How can we talk to them? Saki wants to sell his cow meat to some shop in Ghana, but he's quoting a cow meat's weight in pounds, and the guy there is measuring in kilograms. You really think someone who has a cow meat buying or selling business in Ghana want to sit there with a calculator, a pen and a paper, and all of the hardware and start calculating from pound to kilogram before they buy from you, when there's another guy selling to him already in kilograms? You really think that? You think they're going to change the weigh bridges at the port because Saki wants to sell cocoa to Ivory Coast in pound? We can talk to our neighbors. You may say, why is America succeeding in the English Imperial System? Don't ask me that question. It is the United States of America. In their internal trade is great, and they have enough capacity to solve this kind of problem. We don't. How many measuring scientists we have at the Ministry of Commerce and Industry? No disrespect to them. But how many measuring scientists we have to do this kind of thing? We have all kinds of conversion issues. Even the way you quote your dates, Mr. Jai, it has to be standardized. Okay. The way you quote your dates, Mr. Jai, has to be standardized. If you quoting your date as year, month, day, another guy is quoting his date as month, day, year, it could cause confusion. So that's what the important reason of metrology, to be able to trade. There are 2 things. Technical barrier to trade, SPS, and you know most of these things are glossed on the surface. I got to say to the listener, and I know you guys as the host and panelists, you guys coming out and go to other things very politely because we have 1 hour, but these are deep issues. Technical barrier to trade explains just that. You cannot trade with someone if you don't even speak their own measurement language. That's a technical barrier to trade. It's only called SPS, sanitary, phytosanitary. It's also another issue. You know, at the Europe-wide talks some years back, we came about the SPS system, or the World Trade Organization adopted the SPS system. We need to know that if Saki is selling food to me, or seeds to me, is it GMO? Is it organic? So without all of these pieces of information, Liberia cannot easily export. Let me just be blunt. We cannot easily export.
So in essence, let's come to the common man. The question was, why should a common man care about the food eating in the Kobo shop, the medicine he buying in the street? Why should he care about standardization and measurement?
Oh, he should care because it also affects his life directly. If a guy in Benin, sorry to use that country name as an example, but we're just talking science. If a guy in Benin makes a mistake on 1 while measuring the level of mercury in the fish, and we did not measure that, but because we said, oh, it was purchased in Benin, it has to be good, that guy in Liberia is going to eat that fish with a high mercury content. So it happened before in my career at LPRC at some point in time. where people will say, "Oh, this gasoline product is fit for the market because it was measured. I mean, it was tested in Ghana, it was tested in Sweden." I, as an individual, had to send back 5 petroleum vessels because while retesting the gasoline, I found that at least in 5 cases, those gasoline products did not meet our market standards. Now, saying market standard, you may say, "Oh, you said we did not have standard." Everybody in Liberia has some kind of spec that they want their product to match up to. That's why I refer to our market standard. LPRC has our own spec. Whether that has been enacted into law, not exactly, but by default, because LPRC is the market regulator for gasoline, so they have that power to establish spec. You know.
So you work at LPRC, right?
Yes.
And so can you tell more about your work there and what are some of the things before you left LPRC?
So I was recruited by Mr. Aaron Wiega to help establish a quality management system at LPRC. After I had contributed to establishing the National Standard Lab, contributed to establishing the Metrology Unit, and establishing a quality management system at the National Standard Lab. So that experience, I went over to LPRC. And my first 6 months of interaction with them was just being a stock analyst and developing a plan. After I completed my first master's degree in optics and photonics, I returned to LPRC to build a standard petroleum testing laboratory, which I did. I had the support of Professor Sumo Kupi, so I was able to do that. And our job was to say, hey, gasoline being imported into Liberia must be tested now, going forward. Before then, people will only measure the density of gasoline and say, oh, the products can be sold in the Liberian market. So there were only 1 test and maybe 2 columns which you can look at. So I went there and developed 11 tests for gasoline, premium motor spirit, 6 tests for AGO, which these are not even all of the tests that can be done, but with the capacity I have. About 9 tests for jet fuel. Just imagine jet fuel wasn't being tested extensively, and people put it in jet planes.
What's the impact of not testing these jet fuel, gasoline? What's the risks it poses to the public?
When you get a petroleum product, it contains all kinds of things. You may have a petroleum product with too low a flash point. It's going to cause fire. It's going to cause fire within the engine. You may have petroleum product that have too much water content. You may have petroleum product that have too much debris in it.
A car that may catch fire in the street could be a reason for the petroleum product having low flash point.
It's possible. Yes, petroleum product having low flash point. Yes, it's possible. So these are the things that we did, and we managed to achieve within a period of 8 months. We managed to achieve what a petroleum testing laboratory. In fact, we were invited to participate in a round robin test in Africa because of the achievement we have, where we have inter-laboratory comparison.
The ISO.
Yes, and we have round robin with the African Refinery Association too. So that was so I can say we did a good job. Now, what happened next? What led to me? Just before I left, your question, this is the interesting part. It's a story worth listening to. I had this lab, and then I would test petroleum product in advanced management. And yes, this product is good for the market, or no, this product is not good. Now, our importers were immediately accustomed to this kind of system because they have been used to almost 20 to maybe 30 or maybe 50 years of bringing in petroleum product and now having it tested. Maybe 50 years.
Poor quality.
Yeah, most of the time, to be frank, most of the time, they were just on the margin. So now LPRC did not have the experience with rejecting petroleum product. When you do that, I mean, you are causing the importers millions.
You mean not experience, but the appetite?
maybe. So when I was the laboratory manager there, you needed my go, no go to discharge petroleum product on the Liberian market.
Okay.
And at least in 5 instances, petroleum product was found to be wanting to meet quality standard, and I refused that discharge on the Liberian market. In all of these 5 instances, these vessels were turned back. These were first in Liberia history. 3 of these reached national attention because the importers were very, very stubborn. They were strong-armed. They talked to some of their cronies in national legislation, But I had the support of the MD at the time, and there was a lot of temptation, but I think I stood my ground because we're scientists to begin with, right? So we cannot be at the forefront of processes that will lead to the death and destruction of properties and also shorten the lifespan of our people. So to cut long story short, these vessels had to be sent back. It was not a very popular move within the importer community, but they were done, and they registered the first time that this needs to be done in LPRC history. I can show you successfully acquired a lot of enemies in the process, but I think that we benefited, yes, I think that we benefited by gaining the respect and the trust of the consumer community. I mean, it was the last 3 vessels were national issues, so the Liberian people knew that at least there were some scientists or some chemists, some physicists were looking out for them. So you see Saki, right? Then the people understand the essence of letting our kids study science. Then just finished understand the essence of supporting a science scholar, because Liberia is seriously lacking when it comes to scientific technocrat that will move the country forward.
Excellent, excellent. And this is a discussion that it can go beyond 1 hour. There are a lot of things involved to discuss, and I'm really impressed the level of involvement you've put into the country meeting up with some standards to get accreditation and also be member of the WTO, the World Trade Organization. And a lot of people may be thinking over the years, for some of us who invested our time in doing the chemistry, physics, and all that where does it carry you? But I mean, we are here discussing these things that matter to us, the life and safety of our people. They're very important, especially with the products that we use that most of the time are not tested, like the gasoline. I've sat in taxis before and I'm smelling the gas, just kind of the scent you get in the taxi, you feel like throwing out, you want to vomit, and you don't know what the gasoline contains. It poses a serious health hazard. The same thing goes with the cream and other products we use on our skin and all that. The manufacturer's declaration is what we've been going by, and these are things we want to address. We hope that policymakers, those in a higher hierarchy, those who are decision makers are listening and, taking note that Liberia needs to move forward. We need technocrats, we need people in the sciences to help us to enhance, to come up with some legal framework and also our technical approach to meeting up standards so that our people's life, we know the life expectancy in Liberia is around 60 something, and we still trying to get somewhere higher. But before we get there, we need the scientists, we need the medical doctors, we need the pharmacists. Everyone should come together and discuss standards, the quality of the products on the Liberian market. They are of high importance. But Mr. Jha, I will turn it over to you to see what our viewers saying and what are some of the concerns, and so Mr. Sherry may be able to address them.
I think Mr. Jha is muted.
Mr. Jha?
All right. So few comments here from our viewers. The first is from Felicia Barrow Nuta. He said, please let us grow more food in this nation. Taking a little out of topic. Then Dave Jha says, even our English language needs to be standardized for academic purpose. He also writes, how did you feel, Mr. Sherry, after rejecting a commodity only to find it on the market at a later date? Next question is from Jimmy Eastburn. Is Liberia taking advantage of United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, that aids developing countries in developing capacity and standards? The last comment here also comes from Dave Jha. He said, in Liberia, I often hear people talk about kilometers, while others may say miles. Kilograms versus pounds. Where does Liberia stand? What are the advantages and disadvantages of using varying standards of measurement?
Well, thank you. I will start with the UNIDO thing. Yes, I am a product of the UNIDO Liberian Partnership. My metrology knowledge is as a result of that, because when we started the National Standard Laboratory Project, it was UNIDO that actually constructed the building. My training in UK was paid for by UNIDO, and most of my international travel, because metrology is quite new to Liberia, so we had to work with a lot of international partners to achieve, our growth and development in metrology. Standardization, not so new, but it has not been promoted. But metrology, very brand new. So UNIDO, yes, UNIDO has contributed a lot towards the development of standardization in Liberia. UNIDO worked very hard to have a national standard board. That was how I was going to answer Saki's question, because with a national standard board, they will have a national standard bill. They will have laws, right? So UNIDO worked very hard to achieve those things. There were a lot of hiccups along the way, a lot of government bureaucracy getting in the way, some pinch of corruption, to say the least. And then we didn't achieve those. But yes, listener, UNIDO has been helping, and when I was there, UNIDO's offer was taking advantage of. And the next one about the kilometer stuff, we just talked about it. As a nation, Liberia's standard, Liberia's official measuring system is the English Imperial system. I had a copy of a Liberian passport around my desk. I just took it upstairs. I will have shown it to the viewer. Our heights are still measured in feet and inches on our passport. So Liberia's standard is still the English Imperial measure, but we have not yet migrated to the international system of measurement. I remember my last attempt to help achieve this was with a discussion with John Whitfield, one of our former legislators. I think he's dead, may his soul rest in peace. And the guy looked me bluntly in the face and said, "Look, Hafiz, you're a scientist. Look through that window. Tell me what you see." I said, "Oh, I can see through the window and I see trees and grass and everything." He said, "Because you're a scientist, so you see everything clearly and black and white." I am a politician. Liberia is America's, I don't know, stepchild or first hand or something, on America's friend in the West. We go how America goes. America is still English Imperial. We remain English Imperial. So that was very sad. But I can assure you, most of the scientific community in Liberia, including Saki, including Nicholas, including everyone, have been lobbying very hard for Liberia to make a transition to the to the metric system or the international system of measurement. And I think in 2018, the current Minister of Commerce should be Professor Wilson Kietabe, if I'm not mistaken, promised that we're going to make the transition. I mean, like most of his predecessors, that's a promise. They all have promised, but no one has taken a genuine step to make that move. So we are still English Imperial. And how does that? I almost missed that. And what's the negative of that is it's straightforward. You have to do a lot of conversions. In science, every time you do an operation on a number, you increase the uncertainty. You increase the uncertainty. Every time you do an operation on a number. So if Saki measures his weight, and he says he's 150 pounds, that is 150 plus or minus the least count, or the instrumental error, not least count, plus or minus the instrumental error of the bathroom scale you use. Now, if Saki converts that to kilogram, there's something called propagation of error. We need to also expand that calculation. So you are incurring a lot of errors and uncertainty, and traders don't want to do those things. It may sound very minute to you if you're talking about 2 pieces of bone in the market, no disrespect to common consumers. But you know what that will interpret into if you are selling tons of latex from Firestone, or you are talking about tons of metric tons of gasoline, that interprets into a whole lot. A small 0.5% error interprets into thousands, or maybe even tens of thousands, or perhaps hundreds of thousands based upon the commodity you're talking about. So it is just not nice. And as the other guy talked about standardization of our English, I will leave that to the people in the language area to talk about. Personally, I feel like, we're trying our best with English, but I will leave that to the language people. I don't want
to. You strike a very important point, and I want to practicalize it about changing from one standard of measurement to the other. Mm-hmm. It's just like when we are speaking, right? Because if Saki's weight is measured in pounds and you have to change it to kilogram, then in healthcare you have to be exact because it's based on that. Yeah, exact. So it's the same way with translation. If Saki have to speak via to me, and then somebody translate from via to Gribble, then from Gribble to English, there are a lot of things going to be lost in translation. So by the time Saki's message get to me, maybe he was telling me to get up. Maybe it may come to me as jump up. Yeah. So a lot of things will be lost. And then with the food we eat or the medication we take or the things we do, the error rate should be almost non-existent for us to live.
Mm-hmm. That's true. You see, just to add up, just to buttress your point, there are a lot of trace elements in almost everything we consume that we can never get rid of 100%. But the chemists here, the doctor in chemistry will tell you that we ensure that they are below minimums, they are below minimum levels, they are below maximum level, at the same level or less.
Yeah.
So we measure them in parts per million or parts per billion.
That's per billion.
Right? Good. Now, so you see, if you think small errors don't matter, think about you exceeding a few parts per billion of a trace element that is hazardous to you. Yeah, for example, lead. Lead might be in drinking water, but for water to be considered potable or drinkable for the common man to understand, all of these trace elements have to be below certain concentration. And then we're not measuring well because you go to the lab to do your analysis. Someone show you a balance from Great Britain. Then someone show you a volumetric flux from America. And someone show you something for Germany. That's not standard. You can't trace all of these things. You can do it if you spend a lot of time, a lot of precision. You are careful enough. You will do it. But I mean, talking about a working scenario here, practical scenario. This is not a research program or not a PhD thesis, and you say, okay, I will take care of all of these. This is something that comes on a daily basis. Ja is selling mineral water. He wants to sell tens of thousands of sachets a day. He wants you to measure his thing quickly and test his water quickly. He's going to sit down and allow you to do a 2-week calculation on certain data just because you are converting from one measurement system to another. No, he's not going to do that.
So, yes, great. So, I mean, this issue of standardization and measurement rests surely on institutions that the government, like outsource the responsibility to institutions to help us meet up with these standards. You talk about BVAC. I've heard about BVAC all along about their presence at the Freeport, which we call the gateway to Liberia's economy. Yeah. It might be a gateway to our, short lifespan. We don't know. But what about BVAC? What are they doing?
Okay, in a single breath, my experiences with BVAC Liberia as it relates to petroleum quality has taught me not to trust their work in Liberia. BVAC is a French-based standardization or laboratory or testing body or what have you. I don't know about all of the work they are doing outside of Liberia and in other countries, but BVAC Liberia, I don't trust them. Because the 5 vessels I just told you that I had taken from the Liberian market, or I refused their captains to discharge their product onto our market. All of those vessels had their product tested and declared good for use by BVAC.
Wow.
And every time I ran the test and said this product were not good, these vessel captains or these vessel owners or the owner of the products on the vessels will take their product to BVAC, and BVAC will say, this is good. And BVAC is paid on a contracted basis as the entity for second opinion in Liberia. So see, I feel very passionate about this. So see my predicament. Hafiz is going to say, Saki, this petroleum product is not good for use. Government is going to say, second opinion, BVAC, what do you say? BVAC will say it's good for use. To send that vessel back, we now have an issue because we have to argue and argue and argue. I have to argue that LPRC is the mothership when it comes to our petroleum market. And in all 5 of those cases, I was never listened to by external parties. We always had an international expert brought into Liberia, and we had conference testing in my lab. And every time we did a conference testing, at one point in time, we had 2 chemists brought from Ghana. I felt very insulted by it. Not because they came from Ghana, but because our own Liberian government is not that supportive. And the product chemists from Ghana, we found out that the flashpoint of AGO, that's automatic gasoline oil, right? Were not meeting the standard. They were too low. You could ignite them. And then automotive gas oil, sorry, not automatic, but automotive gas oil, AGO, what we call diesel fuel in Liberia, right? Mm-hmm. And we had to argue that. The last 3 vessels I sent back, they had people brought from BVAC Ivory Coast. One scientist came from BVAC Ivory Coast, and we had the petroleum product tested in my lab. And the petroleum product had too much debris, were just not good to be used. And after all of these conference testing, the conclusion in all the 5 cases always were, yes, indeed, the laboratory at LPRC is correct. Hafiz and his school, I have very excellent, analysts in my place. I had Django Salif, we had Miss Ye, we have other people. And it was always the case that, yes, these guys have done a very good job. The test is correct and these products should be sent back. And BVAC was saying that this thing is good enough. So, in my experience with them, because we work closely in the port area, most of the time they were doing visual inspection. I'm not bad-mouthing BVAC, I'm speaking facts. If you check with their Observer newspaper or something, you'll see one of the stories in there about the
I came across a story on Front Page Africa a couple of, I think 2 years ago about
yes.
vessel, and there was a serious commotion going on about accepting the vessel or not accepting.
Exactly.
The biggest thing it boils down to is public health.
Yeah.
And these things that come on the market without being properly scrutinized, or when they are scrutinized and people come behind bad parts and force them back on the market. It's all about money making. It's not about people's health and safety. But Mr. Jai, you wanted to come in.
Yes, because I'm curious as to what BVAC was using.
Good.
Because you have a lab. What were they using to counter whatever you were saying?
So when we sent back, I think the second vessel for high sulfur content, Saki will tell you all about the risk of high sulfur in gasoline. But just frankly speaking, don't use gasoline with too much sulfur in it. It's just not good. Sulfur is a suffocating gas. In a gaseous state, you don't want to breathe it in, right? So when we had a petroleum product that has so much sulfur in it, I may sound very passionate about this, but scientists are very professional people. So this day, I decided that we do the conference testing in BVAC's lab. Nice setup, flow well clean, glass ceiling, and everything else. Most of the equipment are not operational. Some years ago, BVAC established a lab in Liberia, and these things work for a few months or so. To have a laboratory, you need constant calibration of your equipment, constant maintenance, and equipment goes out of setting by 5%. You put it down, you don't use it again until you put it back to setting. I can advise you, Mr. Jai, if you took something to Liberia and someone said, this thing is not up to standard, ask them what equipment they did use. When was it last calibrated? What standard did you compare it to? So to call Loma, that's why we went to BVAC, and the equipment we should use to test for sulfur content was not working. We had to on-site repair it. I was part of the repair group. I went to their lab as a visitor, but I had to participate in on-site repairing. At one point in time, we had to use the Prescott Maintain flash point test equipment. The gas flow was clogged. We had to go and fix that for it to work. We clearly say that they don't mostly test. And to be very clear, that BVAC has one technician for the sake of privacy. I won't call him in, but that one technician happened to be double dipping. He worked with me as my senior technician in my lab. So BVAC does not even have a staff. So the guy is working with BVAC part-time. You understand? As a contractor, part-time. At one point in time, it led to his suspension because we had this 3 vessel thing to send by. I told him, I'm giving you direct instruction. We have an issue now. We are challenging BVAC result. You have to stay away from BVAC until this is over. And he probably didn't listen. And I had to suspend him for like 6 months.
Good.
Yeah. Because that's just the thing that BVAC does not have the staff to test petroleum products. They're using LPRC staff. So
that's scary. And my major concern is about how consumers of these products view it. What's the public knowledge that goes out? Talking about sulfur content. Sulfur comes, the crude oil, all the crude oil that gasoline, diesel comes from, they contain sulfur. When you're doing refinery, you're refining the crude oil, the gasoline contains sulfur naturally. It comes with it. So, and it has to be removed. And there's certain standard it has to meet before going on the market. You check on the EPA website, the Environmental Protection Agency in the US, they tell you what content of sulfur should be in the gasoline. Because my background is in environmental chemistry, where I make materials to absorb pollutants. And sulfur is one of the pollutants. When you have it in it, you cannot control the pollutant level. So that's why sulfur is important to remove as many as like 95% sulfur removal. So if Mr. Hafiz in his lab tests the sulfur content of a gasoline is so high, it presents problem for the market. And I think EPA has to be concerned about what type of gasoline is coming on the market, the sulfur content, and a lot of other different contents that come that pose, a problem to people's health.
Let me ask about EPA in Liberia. I don't know if that had to do with standardization or anything of that sort.
Sure.
So tell me about the Environmental Protection Agency. What do they do as regards standardization?
So like I said, Liberia has no system that harmonizes all of these standards. So you see, I avoided talking about the medicine and drug aspect of it, right? Because all of these various agencies, they're working in their own satellite orbits, right? To do what they can do.
Silos.
Yes, thank you. So EPA is also a standardization body. They are a monitoring and regulatory body. Amongst other things, they are a standardization body. So they care more about the environment, right? We have had interactions with EPA when I was at the National Standard Laboratory. I remember I recommended one of their staff for international training on radiation and on other things like GMO, meaning GMO, right? So EPA ensures that the environment is protected. So we don't have too much emission of a bad substance that will harm human life. We don't destroy our freshwater bodies. We don't compromise the ecosystem and all of those kind of things. How does it relate to LPRC? First of all, I'll tell you, it comes in terms of waste. LPRC is an entity that deals a lot with gasoline products. There will obviously be waste. To dispose of this, we have to meet EPA standard. Saki just told you about sulfur. There are a lot of other things in gasoline. Gasoline has all kinds of. Gasoline is an organic substance. A lot of organic substances are carcinogenic, which means they will cause cancer. They're malignant in nature. Now, we dispose of these things. I'm not trying to push LPRC under the bus, but we dispose of these things according to methods of our own. At no point in time do we have a standing policy from the Environmental Protection Agency. That this is how we dispose of this. When I just joined LPRC in the capacity of laboratory manager, they have been sitting in Liberia at our old Ghanaian site for a rack of ages, as we say in the local parlance. Very dangerous volume of chemical at our abandoned site. LPRC used to use that Gardnersville area before for refining purposes. And that chemical, that waste has been sitting there for years, and we couldn't even dispose of it. And just imagine how dangerous that was to the people who live around there. Up to the time I left LPRC, that chemical has still been there. We're struggling to remove it. We had to work with EPA to come up with the proper disposal mechanism. Why am I saying this? If LPRC had a strong, working, functioning, practical tie with EPA, in the environment, that chemical will have been disposed of a long time ago. EPA has professionals. They have people like Mr. Gombu. They have very smart people who can do the job. But from the intergovernment, interagency collaboration, in the tolerance for one another, all of these things have to come together to have a working system. So back to something just crossed my mind. One of the listeners said, "How do I feel if I send back a particular product and see it on the Liberia market?" In my experience with LPRC, that happened, I think, once. I was on a trip to Ghana, and there was an entity, I won't say that name here, that brought in petroleum product that I measure and deem like unfit. And I was on my way to Ghana to sit on internationals and, on my build up to coming for my PhD studies. So I couldn't miss this. And I left things with administration, and definitely that product was discharged in the Liberia market. Because you see how bad the system is. So one person has to be there, alive and healthy for it to work. For it to work, once you are absent, then things go south. It should not be like that. And I will tell you a bit about something called the Asakura System in Liberia, where it's a system, it's an electronic mobile system that kind of follows our imports and how they are discharged and distributed across the country or so. The Asakura system ensures that if Saki imports petroleum product and say it is not to be used in Liberia, the Asakura system will log onto the petroleum product and trace and track that product until it leaves the Liberian market and maybe cross the border at Guinea, Ivory Coast, or Sierra Leone. because our product was not to be sold in Liberia. That system is supposed to be full of high level of integrity, because they don't want him to say, Saki will bring a product. We say, oh, it's below our standards. Saki said, no, I'm only passing through. I'm not selling it yet. Then Asakura must ensure that he doesn't sell it yet. But does it always work? No. We have heard rumors that sometimes the guy just drive and go as far as Kanta, and no one is following him, and he just dumps his product down, and it comes right back on the market in Monrovia or in San Nicolas or so. So these are some of the challenges we face.
So you're talking about traceability in terms of product quality, meeting quality standards. From my background, we ensure what we call traceability. How do we ensure that a particular product that entered the market was consumed by a particular person? And how do we determine the manufacturer, and the manufacturer claim that something has been used by this person is from this company? Traceability from the manufacturers to the consumers. How does that work?
Sure, in the quantitative sense of the word, because I just want to put up a preface here, because traceability may mean how we trace a particular standard to higher standards, to more precise standards. But in a quantitative sense of the word, yes, that's what I'm talking about. So if JAR, for instance, imported insert X metric ton of rice to be sold on the Liberian market, everything he said when he imported that rice, everything he declared to the Ministry of Commerce, those are the things he must do until the rest ends up in my stomach.
I might be using the word wrongly, but what I was driving to is, how do you determine that John Brown drank this water that was produced by XYZ company, that it has some issues with quality and standard? How do we follow?
So sorry, let me just walk our listener through an example. So we have water in abroad, a lot of drinking water company in abroad, not mineral water, because that's another different thing. That's why I said 1 hour cannot do justice to all of these things. Mineral water means you must enrich the water with other minerals. Drinking water is what we have, like you go to some water source, you treat the water, purify it, and you put it in a sachet and sell it. That's different from mineral water. It's not enriched. Now, so Saki or Hafiz or anyone has a drinking water company. Now, in Liberia, we have minimum standards that water must meet before we allow people to drink them. Let's pick one. Let's say mercury should be below 13 parts per million. Why parts per million, right? We take this sample, it starts with sampling, it starts with everything. Saki makes his water, and Saki packs his water. Saki should not sell. Saki should pack the water in a specific way that will permit proper sampling. But any sampling, Saki will not bring to us 2 bottles of water and say, test it. Suppose to high best. They got rules of sampling.
Random sampling.
Yeah, the samples must be random. They must be roulette chosen. There's got all kinds of rules. So Saki's warehouse must structure in a certain way. He can just put all the water in one corner because he wants to cheat. Then we cannot reach to the other sample over there, so we take the first 2 we see. Like there's someone selling fish and every other fish is rotten, so they pour the rotten fish in for, and then the new ones, the good ones they are buying. No. So we will sample, then we take it to the lab. Then we have a chemist or an analyst. I keep flipping between this chain because sometimes you don't even require a P. In fact, it would be a misuse of a PhD talent to have it staying in the lab. I can tell you, Mr. John, Dr. Galafale already knows about this. Dr. Galafale, sorry. This is routine. In fact, the way you achieve accreditation is that you want the guy doing the job to do it routinely. Sometimes before Mr. John goes for inter-laboratory testing, he must have done the same procedure like almost 1,000 times. So it is pretty routine because we want you to have proficiency, right? Then we test this water and we see, the water is below 1 parts per million in mercury. So the water passes. Okay, you can sell on the market in terms of mercury standard. Or the water is above 1 parts per million. Then the water fails. Then we say you can't sell this. Then to ensure that you don't sell it, you have to. We need that's why I keep saying standard system. We need to report now to another body because we have a testing body, which is the lab. We have standardization body. We have accreditation body. We have all kinds. We have inspection bodies. We have sampling bodies. We have another body that will go to Saki's warehouse and say, you can sell this water and ensure that he can sell it in the best ways possible. Whether it involve confiscation, whether it involve...
Recently, couple of months ago, we saw the Inspector General of Commerce, Miss Davis, if I may get her name right, are coming down hard on expired products on the market in warehouses that had expired products. And we could go on and talking about all of these things. And another very important issue has to do with the relabeling practices in Liberia, where goods are relabeled with expiration date that may pose health hazard to our people who are eating it or consuming it. But Mr. Ja, before we come to the close of this, what's your thought?
I have a question. I have three things. First, let me read a comment. Then I have a question for you, Dr. Galafale.
Okay.
2 comments. 3. B. Theophilus Mambu say exactly, Hafiz. The 3 countries are Liberia, US, and Myanmar, which use the English Imperial system. And yes, conversion between systems can have huge scientific and economic impacts. In most cases, grave consequences. Think Lockheed Martin in 1999. Jimmy Eastman, has your guest seen studies on what the cost would be for Liberia to switch to the metric system? We are already exchanging energy with neighboring countries, has evidence in 220 volt being more prevalent in Liberia. Sometimes we carry our cell phone there, we can use it.
Okay, sorry for interrupting. Let me just get back to that viewer question right away. He's talking about 220 votes. Is there another measurement for voltage that you know about? We're talking votes. That's the same votes we use in Liberia. That's the same votes they use in Ghana. So you have to know these things, right? The English imperial measurement, the unit for potential difference is votes. In the SI system, unit for potential difference is vote. So there's a one-to-one conversion here. That's number 1. Number 2, we're talking about trade, my dear listener. We're not talking about gifts. We're not talking about someone giving you something. We're talking about trade and economic impact. If China wants to give Liberia something and say this is 20 kilograms of this item, or maybe 4 million metric tons of this item, it's a gift. Where is the economic loss coming in? You understand? But if we have to trade, then you have an issue. So yeah, you can continue. Sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to clear that.
How do you establish labeling standards and protocol to track and access certain batches of water, food, etc., just in case these products need to be recalled out of the economy? And let me read one last one. BNP, lack of standardization and measurement have made everyone in Liberia thinking that everything is normal or okay. It even encourages cheats. Imagine, oh, there's a long one. Okay, imagine even in our local market, the same amount of bitter ball on Man Krubo's table and my Yasa's table could be sold at different prices. go buy it to go watch your market.
So you see that last listener just got it right, because one of the benefits of standardization is the protection of consumers. You have to protect consumers to ensure fair trade. You have to protect them. And the other guy who asked the question about what can be done about labeling. So you see, that's one of the reasons why I expected that we don't have practical national standards that are legal and on the books. Because when you have these things, I can assure you, you won't have to ask this question. Because within the scheme and framework of a national standardization body, Saki producing boxes of matches, right? We have a certain way of inscribing batch numbers on those things that he cannot change, and he'll be regularly audited. So even if someone wants to go and change something, the audit record will show that he's, excuse me for expression, but he's cheating, right? And then he could be stopping his tracks. So you see, we don't have it. Somebody may claim we had our law in 1847 that said from this point to this point is 1 year. Therefore, we have standards. I mean, you can't sue anybody for saying your hair short or your hair long. So your yard shorter than my yard or your yard longer than my yard. So we need a national standardization system under the umbrella of a national standardization board, like Ghana. Ghana has a GSB, Ghana Standards Board. Under this umbrella, we have all of these elements and facets of standardization, which will include metrology. Metrology is just a science. I'm saying just, that doesn't mean it's not important, but metrology is a science of achieving measurement and in comparison to standard. There are other labs under standardization. There's a chemistry lab for testing all of these, things the mercury level and all of this, and other, other trace elements of concern. So, yeah, we need one.
Again, I'll take you back to my village where the standard for going to school, you must be able to measure your hand like this and touch your ear.
Yeah.
If you can't touch it, so
Yeah.
when your hand is short, you're going to be staying a long time home. You're not going to go to school.
Okay, so you see, then in your village, that is true. You see why we need standards, right? Because there's also something called dwarfism. There are all kinds of forms of dwarfism. The favorite I like to talk about is chondrostrophic dwarfism. Now, if you start on dwarfism, you ain't going to touch your ear anytime soon. So when are you going to start school? When you're like 40?
So we need standards.
When you're like 40? So we need standards, right?
Yeah.
Saki just like my questions. But Saki, here's my question for you.
Yeah.
I mean, the last time we're here, we're discussing, clinical trials and those things, storage of pharmaceuticals. And these things are very important. Today, we are discussing another important topic, standards. That without standards, the impact. If we don't know the storage and we are taking the medicine and the storage is going to impact it, but we are taking the medicine, we don't care about storage, the temperature and all that, right? These things are so important. Why is it that we are not excited about them in Liberia? That in Liberia, if we want to have someone to establish a standardization board or to head it, that person, nobody wants to be that person, but if we want someone running for representative, no disrespect. So why is it that these things are so attractive and the things that are life and death issue, we really don't know about them or care about them? Why is it that politics rules our life and things as important as what we're talking tonight, almost nobody knows or nobody cares?
When you talk about politics, and everything is governed by politics. But in my view, politics is being seriously misconstrued in Liberia. Okay. Why am I saying this? In my 9th grade class in J.J. Ross in 1997, I learned that politics has to do with the governance of public decision that affect the livelihood of the state. That decision has to be effectively governed. When I say effectively governed, decision about our standard lab being autonomous, decision about our petroleum testing agency being independent, autonomous, and trustworthy. Everything has to be governed, and there has to be a political will to do them. I'm not a politician. I'm not a traditional politician, but I can tell you that the reason these things have not surfaced and they have not gained public attention is because there are a lot of hands under. It's a big business, right? The business institutions, they're connected to the government. The government depends on these business institutions, and we have no regulations to enforce. Like Hafiz rightly said, we have no umbrella organization to make sure standardization is practical in Liberia. So most of these things, people don't know them. They're not part of public knowledge. And of course, the public needs to know. And the public start to know and challenge the authority that indeed our health and safety matter.
Right.
But again, it has to do with the practice of good politics, where public decision about our health and safety is well governed, well structured to meet up the day-to-day activities of Liberians. So politics will always rule in a negative sense, that people have to say politics is about interest. I don't like to hear that. It's not about personal interest, it's about national interest. People have to know that the health and safety of our people matter. Our gasoline coming with high sulfur content poses a severe problem to our environment, pollution.
How often are we testing our cars for emission, the level of emission? Cars coming in the country, there are laws or regulations that say certain cars that are of this age should not enter the country, but it's still going on. So to answer your question, people don't understand, our people don't understand the true meaning of politics, that all of us, as a chemist, a physicist here, a metrologist, all of us fall under the umbrella of effective decision making governed by political leaders. And we have a say in the day-to-day politics. We're not excluded. Because if we don't have a say, how do we make sure that products that come on the market, like Make It Take contains, most of the Make It Takes or spices that contain what we call monosodium glutamate. These are chemical compounds that, depending on their level in the product people are consuming, it can cause health hazard, right? I don't eat Make It Take. I stopped eating Make It Take because every time it will make me vomit, right? There was a problem with Make It Take. Every time I eat food with Make It Take, I won't take it again because people were just cooking the cocoa shop. You eat the cocoa shop, you eat all Make It Take. People are just putting toxin in their bodies unknowingly. And again, all of these things we're talking, they have to be governed by effective decision making, quality decision making under the umbrella of political governance. I'm not talking about the negative politics where people, going to curse you for raising issues like Afis is raising about vessels coming in, of course, but we're talking about effective decision making under the umbrella of good politics.
And Hafiz,
Yes,
before you come in, you being a scientist and you know the health has, you send those vessels back.
Yeah.
What is the work now for you as an individual or group of scientists to make sure that the public is educated about these things? Or what do we need to do so that people are aware and support us when you turn the vessel back?
Thank you very much for that question. I was about to add my voice to Saki's last statement as it relates to the similar issue, a similar point. When one of our fundamental problems of having a standardization body in Liberia is the lack of awareness to begin with. I don't know your background, Mr. Jha, but if I were to guess that you were for a non-scientific background, I believe as you leave this conversation, you'll be more concerned about the substances you put within your body. Because the chemists love to say everything is a chemical. Everything is a chemical.
It can kill and also kill.
It can kill and kill. So everything is a chemical. You'll be more concerned. People don't know this. So it goes back to the age-old problem we've been having about education. To be honest with you, as a scientist, and I try to be a deep thinker, I've always tried to put my finger on the single most important problem that Liberia has. And I've always reached to the conclusion that it's education. Sometimes I will come and say poverty, then I will integrate and differentiate, and then I will end up to education. I will take another thing and say, let me see, maybe corruption, but then it will end up to education. Our people are, so I think in the 2005 or 2003, when we had Jaipur clan, I'm not too sure of the day, I think 2003 or so, when we had Jaipur clan, it was reporting that Liberians are like only maybe 10 or maybe 15% literate, right? Now they may say that number has gone up in terms of literacy, but there's a big difference between education and learning. As William Shakespeare would say, he never allows learning to interfere with his education. You can even have 100% literate population. Education, that internal process of superior advancement, if it is not, yeah, you will not know. So if people don't know the importance of these things, right, these things will not be achieved. Let me give you a practical support to my statement. There have been a lot of international bodies that have tried to improve metrology system in abroad. First of all, as a matter of fact, West Africa is no better than Liberia. West Africa is not orders of magnitude better. Let me say it properly. West Africa is not orders of magnitude better than Liberia in terms of standardization. There are a few countries like Ghana and others that in Nigeria that have standard bodies, but most countries they have a thing or two, but not the entire system. So there have been a lot of efforts by some international bodies to establish strong metrology system within West Africa. One of them is the PTB. It's a long German word. I'm sorry, I can't give you the meaning of the stuff, but it's PTB. The first step PTB took towards the development of metrology in West Africa was awareness. Yeah. I mean, I was the repertoire for English-speaking West Africa when we had an international conference in Cotonou. So I am pretty occurrent with this thing. It was awareness. They didn't start from anywhere. They didn't say let's train Saki. They didn't say let's be a lab. They said let's have awareness. Because if people don't know why we must have bathrooms or shower inside our house, they won't care. They will say you are wasting resources on putting shower inside the house. So say in a Liberian way, they say that the table or go inside.
No.
Unless they are aware of the significance. So people
sewage system, the water and sewage system and all that.
No, so we are relying on people like you, people like Dr. Galafale, people that are more frequent within the scientific layman community that form that kind of link. These are the most important warriors in this fight. I'm sorry to describe it as a fight, but it is a fight. These people have to clearly explain to the layman why this is important and why they should care. Now, when they know why they should care, then they will ask for it. You see, they said a child in one of these African writers, in one of his books, he said a child, that's Ama Ata Adus in Dilemma of the Ghost. He said a child who has not eaten egg will not cry for one. So they are not even afraid that they are consuming stuff that based upon, based upon a test result from another country, four or five countries away, maybe tested in Ghana or tested in Cameroon. So that's the first thing, awareness. Then education and awareness, they go together. Then I think when those things are achieved, education and awareness, people will start to understand the significance of it. And just to go back to Ismail, I think that was Ismail that's Jimmy Ismail's question about what studies I have seen in terms of converting to the metric system.
Right. The cost.
Yeah, the cost, I can tell you, science is not cheap. First of all, science is not cheap. But ignorance is even more expensive. Yeah. So if we want to be cheap and want to stick to the English Imperial system, we can continue. But I can assure you, we will trade less. The benefits are just so enormous. Practical example, I'm an experimental scientist. I work in a lab, so I love empirical pieces of evidence. When I went to Brazilian metrology system, for the development of scientific metrology, all of the meetings held by the metrology body that consisted of thousands of employees, everything was done online like this, way before coronavirus like this. Guys tell us that when they started, they were a burden on the government. When they were in their teenage stage, they saved a lot of money. They cut down a lot of money, right? For a lot of budgetary expensive. Now they give the government money because they have solved a lot. No, once you put together a group of scientists, I can assure you, no disrespect to the political field of study. Grab 10 scientists, put them in a department, grab 10 politicians, put them in a department. And tell them, hey, you guys, I'm going to give you people $2,500 stipend and manage with it. When you come back after 10 years, those scientists will have solved a lot of their problems. They will even maybe start producing their own drinking water and making their own food. The politicians will be giving you a bill, of the amount of things that they need and be like, to be honest with you, we still need this, we still need that. Things just to say those are the benefits of science, but you have to invest within it first. Science is going to give you a huge benefit. The payoff is so huge, but you have to invest within it first. Yes. I think my man Haruna Keita or someone should be listening. He studied public financial management. He'll be more occurrent with some of the papers of sciences. But yeah.
Exactly. So, ladies and gentlemen, viewers, we've been discussing the science and standardization of measurement in Liberia, and we've been having Mr. Sheriff here telling us a lot of things that we've not heard before. Some of the things we hope in the future we'll discuss more. This is a very big topic. The food we eat, the water we drink, the medicine we take, the gasoline, name it. All of the products, both local and international, local products, locally produced products, and international products. We don't have time. We would have been discussing
the local or alcoholic beverages and how are they meeting up to standards. Those are things we and it's very important to discuss them because a lot of people drink beer and the alcohol in Liberia. What are you consuming? Are they up to standard? Was standard, labs? Are the manufacturers' declaration? Are they meeting up with what our authority is saying? So these are things consumers need to know. When they say 10% beer, is it really 10% alcohol? So these are things that you need to question. Speak to your lawmakers, speak to people in authority. Let's start a revolution. Let's revolutionize this thing. That's how we can keep our future generation healthy, well, because we're consuming things that we don't know, because our system is still faulty enough to check and scrutinize imported goods that come to the country. I even wanted to ask questions on China products because there are a lot of stories about some 10 years ago, BBC had a program on the Chinese products that were influxing in African markets, the toothpaste and all those things. How effective are they in meeting up standards, like the fluoride content? In the US is so tight, their market is so strong that still there can be poor quality products on the market. Recently, the FDA took out of the market 75 different products of hand sanitizer that contain methanol. Methanol is toxic. It can be absorbed in the skin and it can lead to death. If you drink hand sanitizer containing methanol, you don't know. It says on it 75% ethyl alcohol. But that ethyl alcohol, it has not gone through standardization and testing to determine what it is indeed ethyl alcohol. It could be methanol. And a little child take it and by accident drinks it. It can cause death. There are reports about that. So we need a standard body and we need laws, we need regulations, we need very strong regulations because my ultimate concern is public health, what people are consuming, what the environment is consuming. And I will go on and talking this, but want to hear finally from Mr. Sharif. What's your final word?
I believe there is a strong need for a national standard board in Liberia. And so, like I said previously, I'm an empirical scientist. So I don't want to be someone who would just see the problem and does not have an idea as to what the solution is. So I want my final words to be what suggestions I can make towards Liberia achieving a national standard board. I think first and foremost, we need to appoint a national standardization czar. That's C-Z-A-R. I'm sorry I had to spell it because I'm a little bit far from the microphone. I realize I may not come out clearly. We need someone who will guide the government because this is new to Liberia. We need a national standardization czar. That person has to be a scientist. You understand? A scientist. That person has to be a scientist or an engineer. The person has to be STEM-oriented. The person does not have to have the job because the person has an MBA. Again, we seem to be picking too much on people not from our field, but in this case, we have to do it in a moderate way. Not someone that say, I have an MBA so I can manage things. No, the person has to be a STEM-oriented person. We need that kind of person. And that person will guide the development of an establishment of a national standardization body. We also need comprehensive training of lots of Liberians. Establishing a standardization body takes years. Sometimes it requires half of a lifetime. There are people who started the establishment of national standardization body in certain countries, they died before it were achieved. This body has to be accredited to other international standards. The body has to participate in African and other regional, other regional activity. So we reach a thorough education of lots of scientists in the area of standardization and metrology. We need a national standardization czar, specifically a national standardization czar in the area of either testing analysis or metrology. And then
not somebody who from some party or party.
No. The person has to be the person. That's why I call for autonomy when you asked me the question previously. It's a hard job. You need to have autonomy. If you don't have autonomy, you cannot succeed. There's a job where you're going to look at the president or the commerce ministry and say, look, we know people are Firestone is trying to sell some latest product. I'm going to bring in maybe 30 million next week. but it doesn't mean this and that. WTO standard I advise, we do this and that, we delay the sale. So we need someone who will have that kind of autonomy, that kind of freedom. We need zero interference as the person does their job. Then we need awareness, national awareness, so that the citizenry, the Liberian people themselves can add their voices to the request of a stand-up. When we have these four main pillars, the individual, the establishment of the national stand-up board, trade president, and the education of the citizen. When we have these four pillars, I can assure you things will set themselves in motion. But scientists are trained to solve problems. We need this.
Harvest, before you end, so that ZAR you're talking about, that ZAR doesn't have to be petition.
Oh, good question. Good point. So we need someone who knows their stuff. Now, like I said before, right? It took me roughly a few months to learn this thing, right? So on the average learning curve, anybody will be able to learn this thing once they have a science background. You understand, right? You have a science background. You wouldn't know everything, but you would know enough to spearhead the process. But preferably, if you have a trained Liberian already in the area of standardization, or a trained Liberian already in the area of metrology, you could just use him or you use her. And there are not many people in this area now in Liberia, but there are a few. But there are not many. But you could pick some. The main requirement that the person has to be allowed to do his or her job without fear of interference from stronger people in the society or in government, and the person has to be science-oriented. Trust me, this is not a job for another MBA or another political science person. This is a technical job.
Great.
Mr. John.
Well, it has been a wonderful learning experience. Let me read a few comments just so you know that people appreciate you. Sibeji T. Jablason Jr. say, invest now and reap tomorrow. Thanks, Mr. Sheriff. BNP say, thanks to y'all for bringing on this show. It has been educated. Hafiz, Sheriff, hope you come back another time to expound more on this subject. Joe Cassell, what are the barriers that are working against Liberia having a pharmaceutical company that will manufacture drugs for the local market such as malaria and Lassa fever? Something little outside the scope here. Or Dave Jassy, when I asked the question about politics, he said politics in Liberia is cheap, easy, and anybody can practice it. That's what happens when a nation is governed by incompetent people and those without integrity. Jimmy Eastburns, Dave also said, what are the barriers to standardization? Jimmy Eastburns said, what about the fake medical products that are sent to Liberia? Are the drugs and medical products examined to sell if they meet the standards? And these are just few of the comments, even though they came with questions. And well, I have learned a lot, and I hope our viewers too enjoy it and they were able to take something out of it. Certainly, we want to have Hafiz back and to do more on this. I think we've just scratched the surface. He then completely said 1 hour is not enough, and I agree with him.
Yeah, 1 hour is not enough, and I even wanted to, in the near future we can talk about the issue of the radiation, the myth, the conspiracy theories, and all those things about the 5G, 4G, 3G technology, and all that. So I think you in the area of physics, you can better. Again, it comes down to the issue of education and awareness, and that's what this show is all about.
Curriculum, Saki, because these things you can't get to college before you start hearing about them.
Yeah,
we got to start it from the ABC. I have my youngest is in the 3rd grade. Man, what the kids are doing at that level will surprise you, because those things you must start them from the beginning.
Exactly. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure here this evening discussing chemistry and society. We've been talking about the science of standardization and measurement in Liberia. What's the scientific part? What science has to do with it, and what are the consumers? Those are the end of the chain of the whole product line. What should they concern about? What are our leaders, those in the policy area? Those are different institutions that regulate or control which products come on the Liberian market. How safe are they for consumers? We've been discussing here, and we know that we've had limited time discussing these issues. There are more we need in-depth analysis of issues that of interest to public health and safety. I've been your host here and been glad to have Mr. Hafiz on this show. We hope to bring him back here again to discuss some specific issues when it comes to the science and how our society's approach to these things. And Mr. Ja, from my end, I present to you.
Thank you so much, Hafiz, for your time. We really appreciate you, and I'm very, very proud of what you're doing and what you've shared with us today. Thank you so much. And Dr. Galafale for this. This is the only science show you can find anywhere and on the social media when it comes to Liberia. And this happened only on Focus on Liberia. I used to really be deep into politics, and but I came to a point that, well, I was one of those, when President Sally, I started writing articles. Even from those time, I wrote the first article that brought me to prominence was in 1988 when I wrote the article "Stop Malawala Balawala" on TV. I was in the 12th grade, and that argument continued. And since then, I've been in politics. By 2012, I realized that politics was not getting us anywhere, and I was going to devote my time to education. And that's one reason why Focus on Liberia was born. And that's exactly what we are doing. Because if we Liberians, as you said, education. The reason you did not list corruption or you did not list any of those things, because you did your root cause analysis. You ask your 5 questions. Why? Why do we have this? Why do we have this? At the barest level is education. We have not studied how things are interconnected. So we don't know when we are walking on the bridge on Stockton River and we pee in that water, we don't know how it's connected to our health, to the fish we buy at Joba. So we don't know how things are connected. We don't know what we do today in our little office, how it impacts on a broader scale. We don't know that because of awareness, education, and everything in between. So I am very, very much blessed and honored to be part of this show. I want to thank all our viewers who contributed. Sorry we did not open the phone lines, but the comments were great, and the participation is all that we need. Until next time, when we come to you with another edition of Chemistry and Society, I'm Dennis Jang, closing on behalf of Focus on Liberia. Good night, and God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Mr. John.
Next time, when we come to you with another edition of Chemistry and Society, I am Dennis Jang, closing on behalf of Focus on Liberia. Good night, and God bless you. Bye-bye.